And so probably a lot of you know about Lego and the toys that they offer, the brick and the fire truck, the Bionicles in the upper left here was a $1 billion business. If you had a boy who was 7 to 10 years old in the last decade, there's an 80% chance that you have been begged at some point for a Bionicle. The Duplo in the lower left here is bigger bricks for smaller hands, where Lego expanded into a different market to try and make something for kids big enough that they can't swallow it. And of course, one of the great business partnerships of all time is the Lego Star Wars. 12 years still going strong, multi-billion-dollar business. And you may also know about some of their more sophisticated innovations. This is their Mindstorms robotics kit. And somebody has, a Lego fan has just created the world's fastest Rubik's Cube solver and recently beat out the human record of 5.6 seconds. This is a Lego toy with sensors and motors and intelligent brick that he put together with an Android phone to speed it up, and has made something that can, it's real. It solves the Rubik's Cube in 5.3 seconds. And so you may have heard about these toys, these innovations, but what you may not have heard about is the amazing ride that Lego's been on over the past 12 years. That after an initial kind of birth and growth phase, they hit a stagnant period in the mid-90s. And to get themselves out of that stagnant period, they went through this program of innovation, where they followed all the advice that academics and consultants were giving, and are giving today. And it worked until it almost put them out of business. In 2003, they were this close to bankruptcy. They're running out of cash. They had no committed lines of credit. They were really seriously thinking about selling off the company or liquidating it. But what they did over the next couple of years was, first in 2003, they just generated some cash by selling off assets, but they changed the way they managed innovation. And they put that in place between 2004 and 2007. And then since 2007, they've been on this amazing ride where in the midst of a down market, the toy market slumped as many markets did in 2008. The top row here is the sales. The bottom row is the profits. In the past 3 years, Lego has been growing sales at 25% per year and profits at 50% per year, every year for the past 3 years. So they did something right. But what's amazing is that if I was to ask you yesterday to name a company in a viciously competitive market where the tastes change rapidly, where you have to redesign your product line every year or two, and they're dominating that market because of their ability to innovate, probably what you'd say is somebody like Apple. That if you look at lists of the 50 most innovative companies, Apple's at the top of all of them. Lego isn't in the top 10, the top 20, or the top 50 of any of the lists that I could find. These or there's 2 others. And so it's this great untold story that I'm going to tell you today. And so especially focusing on this period where they tried to innovate and it almost put them out of business. I'll start by giving you a little bit of background, just kind of start you from the very beginning because it's relevant to how they got themselves in trouble. They were founded in 1932 by a Danish carpenter. He started out building wooden toys when he couldn't get a business to build furniture. He invested in the first injection molding machine, big step forward, big risk, in 1947. His kids were later playing in the wood shop. He was making both plastic and wooden toys. They were playing in the wood shop, and they kind of kicked over a stove and burned down the wood shop, so he went entirely into plastic toys from then on. He patented the Lego brick in 1958, grew steadily. His son took over, then his grandson, Kjell Kirk Christensen, took over in 1977, and unleashed this amazing wave of innovation, the first big wave of innovation at Lego. He took this Duplo idea that had been brewing over the 70s and branded it and started marketing it aggressively, and it became a huge brand. In Germany, sometimes it's a bigger brand than Lego. He wanted to expand the other direction. Whereas Duplo opened up that market for younger kids, he thought, well, kids drop Lego at age 9 or 10. If we make something with beams and pins and axles and gears and motors, then we can keep them playing with Lego through their teenage years. And so he invented this technique set. Failed completely among that target market, but he did find a market of 25 to 55-year-old men that loved it, and so it's actually done quite well. But the big innovation that he introduced was the Minifigure. And you know, there's a real split. Those of you who played with Lego and were born before 1970 had a very different play experience than those of you born after 1970, because that little minifigure creates a much more immersive play experience. So he comes out with a minifigure. The first one is a policeman. He comes out with these sets. For the first time, there was these fantasy sets. Before, they'd all been set in realistic settings like towns and cities and so forth. But he comes out with the space set and the castle set. And these are incredibly popular. If you have them in your basement, they're worth thousands of dollars to collectors. And Lego takes off on this amazing ride for 15 years. They grow at 14% per year, basically doubling in size every 5 years for 15 years. They expand into not just space and castle, but there's Wild West, there's underwater, there's pirates, all kinds of different themes, and they expand geographically. They go into the US and other countries, and you know, it all is wonderful for 15 years. But then around 1993, they kind of hit the logical end point of that expansion. And so there's a flattening of sales. And Lego wants to boost sales, so they start introducing more toys. But there's only so many shelves and so many stores. And so you can imagine what happened, right? The complexity of the supply chain goes up, the costs go up, the sales don't, and so, you know, profits tank. And so they, the grandson of the founder, Kjell Kirk, he had taken over in 1977, so he says, I've been doing this for 20 years, it's time for me to step aside. They bring in a turnaround expert from outside the company, a guy named Paul Plowman, who had done a very good job turning around Bang & Olufsen. And he goes out and he tries to understand what's happening with the market. You know, what's happening with Lego? You know, they were kind of an insular company. Their success, you know, they're stuck in the middle of nowhere, Denmark. There's 3 hours of nothing surrounding Billund, Denmark in every direction. And he goes out and he starts looking at the market, and he finds that the market is really changing in fairly dramatic ways. That kids are leaving traditional toys, not just Lego, but you know, Hot Wheels, Barbies, whatever, earlier and going to video games. That the channel that sells Lego is changing dramatically. There's these big box stores in the US. We've got Walmart and Target, there's Metro, there's Carrefour, that are not just much more powerful in terms of the volume of toys that they sell, but also very knowledgeable, in some cases more knowledgeable than Lego about what is selling and what's not and how to merchandise things. There's a move from other toys of production to China, and at the same time the Danish kroner is rising with respect to many of the other currencies, especially the dollar, which is their largest market. And so there's this double hit where comparable toys get much less expensive than Lego. And then lastly, all their patents expire. And so anybody can make a brick that snaps together with a Lego brick. And so they realize that they're really in trouble, and they've got to do some things to innovate. You know, they have a good brand, they have a good bank account, they have a good distribution channel, they have some smart people. And so they say, we've got to innovate. We want to become the world's strongest brand among families with children. And they set an internal goal of recapturing that 80s growth rate of 14%. And they say, we're going to double the size of the company between 2000 and 2005. And they start taking off on this frenzy of innovation. They listen to what all the gurus and the academics, the consultants. I, by the way, spent 5 years at McKinsey and 10 years in academia, so I'm kind of guilty of both. And so they try for open innovation, a full spectrum of innovation, all these things that you're supposed to do, and they do them all. And we'll talk about what happens. But just quickly to go through what we mean by this. You know, the full spectrum is about, you know, if Apple had only offered the iPod, would they be in the same dominant position today that they are? No. It's because they offered a much wider spectrum of innovations. They had the iTunes service that had the copy protection system of Fair Play. It had the new business model of 99 cents per song, so you didn't have to buy the whole damn CD. It had a very compelling marketing campaign. It had a whole 100-page catalog of complementary products like docks and skins and chargers that went along with it and enhanced the ownership experience. And by offering that full spectrum of innovations, they got a sustainable competitive advantage in that new market that they were serving. Open innovation. You know, we've probably all heard about Procter & Gamble and their Connect and Develop develop, program, just the idea of reaching outside, that there's a lot more smart people outside the company than there is, or the way the science fiction writer said it, is that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. That there's, the answers to the problems you're working on inside are probably already outside. And so we should become much more focused on how we can get great ideas from outside the company and bring them in. Disruptive innovation from Clayton Christensen at Harvard Business School, that in any market, there's the tastes of the market at whatever level. This is the steel market, it's one of his examples. And so at the low end, there's low-quality steel, rebar. And at the high end, there's sheet steel that might be used to mold the bodies of cars. And those tastes increase slightly over time, but not as fast as the capability of the technology. So the blast furnaces that the major incumbents were using were also increasing. But a new technology called electric arc furnaces came along, and at first it was only able to make the low-quality steel for much cheaper than the blast furnaces. Then it could make bars and rods, then it could make structural steel, then sheet steel, then bearing-quality steel, and drove the blast furnaces basically out of the market. And so we need to be disrupting our technology, otherwise we're going to be left out of the market. And he makes the point the same thing has happened in disk drives and cameras, and it's happening right now in low-volume custom manufacturing. And then blue ocean markets, right? Red oceans are markets where there's so much competition that there's blood in the water, that they're fighting among themselves in the market. And what we should do is we should find things like ING Directed, where there's markets with underserved segments, and we should reduce the things that people don't care about. Many people don't want a relationship with their bank. What they want is just a place they can put a couple £1,000 or so for a rainy day. And so they're willing to go to a bank and just give them some money and not necessarily need ATM networks and customer service and lots of different products, but just a simple place to put savings, made ING Direct the fastest growing bank in history. The same thing happened in computers with Dell and in flights with Ryanair and Southwest in the US with Quicken software. And so there's all these theories, we can spend a lot more time on this, but you've probably heard them all, that we should be following, that we should do all this. We should hire diverse and creative people. We should walk in our customers' shoes, really understand our customers' needs. We should build an innovation culture. And Lego did all these things, and it almost put them out of business. And so the question is there something wrong with this list? Our consultants, our academics are, we misleading people. And but let me talk about what they did. I mean, in terms of hiring diverse and creative people, they acquired an intelligent toy maker in California. They opened up a new media business in the UK. They opened up their internet business in New York. They opened up kind of a Lego Alessi design studio in Milan, Italy. They looked for blue ocean in the toddler market by coming out with electronic toys that played a song when the toddler dragged it behind, and if you put in a different module, it played a different song. They opened up education centers in Asia with a different customer experience, different channel to market, where you could learn about science, technology, engineering, and math using Lego after school, working with a partner, kind of opening up and developing it together with a partner in Asia. They also worked with Steven Spielberg and made this completely different play experience where you do Lego stop-motion animation, and created a movie studio with a whole bunch of additional kits to do different types of movies. They listened to their customers and found that 3/4 of kids don't actually like building construction toys. And so they created this line of Jack Stone toys where it snaps together quickly and you can kind of play with it right away. They created this Galador toy to try and do a full spectrum where they have a toy, not just a toy, but it also had electronics in it. You could play games. They commissioned a TV show from an external partner. If you watched the TV show with a toy, it would talk back to the TV show. They also worked with another partner to do a video game. If you played the video game with a toy, it would talk back to the video game. And so, trying to do this full spectrum. And then lastly, to disrupt themselves, they created a virtual building experience called Lego Digital Designer, which was part of the whole Lego factory system, where you could actually create and build in 3D blocks without any plastic at all, trying to disrupt their own business. And so by any metric, they created this innovation culture that was spinning out one big idea after the next. And it all worked until it didn't. 2003, early 2003, they were hearing noises, and so they got a young ex-consultant, 32-year-old guy named Jørgen V. Knudstorp, and they said, "Why don't you take a look around and see what's happening?" he gave a report back to Lego's management in June of 2003. And he said, basically, we're on a burning platform. We have only 3 toys last year that were making money. Lego Harry Potter, Lego Star Wars, and Bionicles. And Lego Harry Potter and Star Wars only make money in years where there's a movie, and there's no Harry Potter or Star Wars movie in 2003 or the first half of 2004. We're hemorrhaging cash. We're rapidly running out. We have no lines of credit. We're about to go bankrupt. Things are bad. And the press picked up on it, and they were stunned at first, but over time, they verified his findings and realized he was right. They fired that turnaround expert. They made this young guy CEO of the company, and he took over. I think because nobody else really wanted the job. And so the question is, what's wrong with this list? Is there something wrong? And I was trying to think of a good analogy to use to explain this. And I was talking to my friends at Lego, and I said, the best analogy I can think of, the best metaphor is actually the Darwin Award winner from 1995. You're probably aware of Darwin Awards, that it's given to the people who die in such spectacularly stupid ways that they enrich the human gene pool by removing themselves from it. Right? Darwin is about the survival of the fittest. Darwin Awards is about the extinction of the stupidest. Well, the 1995 Darwin Award was given to a guy who strapped a jet engine on the back of a Chevy Impala, went out to the Arizona desert, accelerated up to highway speed, found a nice straight stretch, lit off the jet engine, and took off down the road. A little bit farther down the road, they find skid marks where he's tried to put on the brakes, but he shreds the tires and blows out the brakes. A little farther down the road turns where there's a rock face. 125 feet up the rock face, there's a 3-foot deep impact crater, and there's just small pieces of car and jet engine scattered around. I said, that was you. I said that to Lego. That was you. The problem was not that these theories of innovation didn't work, is that they did. You kind of strapped on these engines, and what was a car driving down the road became an unguided missile. You lost control of all that innovation that was happening in all those different places all over the world because the guidance system that you had for a car was fine. You would guide a car using a steering wheel, brakes, and shifter and acceleration pedal. But when you're flying, you need a completely different guidance system. An airplane uses ailerons and struts and flaps and rudders and elevators, and it's a much more complex system because it's a much more complex vehicle. Similarly, if you're going to strap on engines of innovation, you're going to need a much more complex innovation guidance system. And that's the lesson of Lego. That an airplane or a car's guidance system really has 3 parts. One is direction, where do you want to go? One is positioning. A car and an airplane both have a GPS. The airplanes, of course, is much more complex, because it has to test not just where you are on the map, but where are you going, how fast are you going, where's the other planes, and then, of course, controls to control all those surfaces like the ailerons and the flaps and struts and rudders and et cetera. And so if you're going to do all these things like sail for blue ocean and practice disruptive innovation and so forth, you're going to need a different innovation guidance system. You need a very clear sense of direction. You're going to need a much more careful positioning system so that you really understand where all those innovation efforts are so they don't spin off out of control. And then a set of controls so that you can actually course correct. Because when Lego was flying down the road in 2003, they were pulling on the levers and they weren't connected to anything. The company was basically rudderless and out of control. But they did manage to kind of strap on wings and kind of just barely miss the edge of the rock face. And now they're at 30,000 feet and flying quite well. They're a jumbo jet flying way above Hasbro and Mattel and their other competition. And so we don't have time to go into all the details of what they do, but I'll tell you a couple of stories around 5 different toys about what they did, just pieces of this. We don't have time for the whole building instructions, which is the last chapter of the book, but I'll tell you some pieces of it. One of the first was just deciding who they were. They went out to their customers and they asked their customers, what are we? What kind of toy? And the customers were very clear. Yes, you're cool, and sometimes it's okay to be edgy, but what we really want is the building experience. And so Mads Nipper, the head of product and market development, got his whole team together, and he held up this 1997 fire truck, and he said, we made this fire truck, and it was a good product for us. It's a little out of date now. But then, during the past couple of years, we've made this fire truck, this Jack Stone truck. I said, this is not a fire truck. This is a space station. This is what we want to do. This is a fire truck. It's clearly Lego. It has a construction experience. It's what our customers want. And this is the kind of thing. We will never build a fire truck like this again. And it became an iconic symbol. I would argue that this is the most important toy in Lego's history because people in other parts of the company started to say, what is our fire truck? How can we return to what made Lego great? So it set the direction. Another problem that they had is that they were able to open up innovation. So they have this phenomenally successful toy, Bionicles, where if you're a Bionicle boy, and I had one of these, then you want to wear Bionicle t-shirts and sleep in Bionicle pajamas at night and sleep in your Bionicle sheets and wear your Bionicle backpack and read the Bionicle stories, which tells you about this year's story where the Toa Nuva are fighting the evil Rakshi, and you need all four of the Toa Nuva to fight all four of the Rakshi, and you're going to demand from your parents that they buy you all 8 of those damn toys so they can play out the story. That was a huge toy, and it was the only toy making money in 2003 and 2004. But the partners were having trouble working with Lego. That working with a whole set of outside partners requires some new things. And what was happening was Lego was taking a year to figure out the story. The story changed each year, and then putting the toy in production, and then getting the toys in the market. And after a year, they'd leave the market. Well, what was happening was that they were not telling the information they needed about, these are the stories, this is where it happens, these are the bad guys, here's the fonts we'll use and the graphics we'll use. And so by the time the partners got their toys to market, it was often too late, and they'd be left with 10,000 pairs of unsold pajamas at the end of the year, and not be happy and not invest in much in Lego the next year. And so they actually changed their process to have a specific point where they would have to have the materials ready for the people outside the company. And that worked okay, but not quite well enough. And so they started up a licensing group whose job it was to knock on the door of the development team and say, we really need that stuff because, unsaid was, I don't get my bonus unless we get lots of licensing revenue. And when they started up that outside group, that group within Lego who was the representative of the outside people, then the whole thing started to work. And they produced a style guide that helped give the information that the outside parties needed. With Mindstorms, that robotics kit with sensors and intelligent brick and everything else that I showed you at the beginning, the first round of that kit was started in 1998, so by 2004 is looking kind of dated. During the layoffs of 2003, they fired almost everybody. There's one person left who really understood the kit well. And so they kind of had to work with their outside fanatic fans who continued to work with Mindstorms and organize and get together and have tournaments and things. And so when they started developing the next round of the kit, what they did is they contacted 4 of the most respected fans and had them sign an NDA and start working with the Lego team to develop the new kit. They said, can we invite our friends? They invited a couple others that expanded to 11. And then in January 2006, they took this robot model to the Las Vegas Consumer Electronics Show. And they said, we'd like another 100 people who will pay for the privilege. We'll pay full retail for the privilege of getting the kit early, helping us develop new models and test it out and write books and magazine articles. They get almost 10,000 applicants, for the privilege of paying to help Lego develop the kit. And those people are just thrilled to be part of this development. And so, in fact, so thrilled that they're contributing lots of ideas and questions and so forth to Lego, to the point where Lego, the email box fills up among the internal team. And at one point, one of the original 4 Mindstorms user partners, he calls up Soren Lund, the head of the Mindstorms team, and says, look, you're either going to have 100 unhappy people or 100 happy people when this toy comes out in August. And right now, you're heading for 100 unhappy people. Because the problem is, if I work for you and I come to you and I say, we should really do this, we should put these things these pieces in the box, you say, no, we can't. We got to sell it for $250 US. And I might come back a second time. I probably don't come back a third time if you tell me no. Well, with these fanatics, they come back 100 times. They never stop. And what the Soren Lund from Lego says is, if you didn't hire them, you can't fire them. You know, they just keep going. And so it's a real risk. It's a different management skill. And so what they ended up doing is hiring a community organizer, somebody whose job it was to go out and take the community and basically formed a hierarchy where they have in red the Lego team, but then they had a representative at the top of the user community who would be the one that would talk to the Lego person, and then a set of insiders below that person, the wider community who was inside the velvet rope below that person, and even lower than that, the wider community, kind of 4 or 5 level hierarchy that was created by the community to manage the whole flow so that, you know, most questions and concerns are actually answered within the community before they ever get up to Lego. A very strict, rigid hierarchy, multiple level, created by the fan community that everybody's happier with. You know, if you're going to crowdsource, you need crowd control. If you're going to manage these people, you need new management skills. You need that role of the community organizer to make this work. And the other thing that they learned from Mindstorms is that you know, they wanted to attack the full spectrum of innovation. And what that is different for different companies. One of the first things you have to do is figure out what is your spectrum, what types of innovation does your company need. It's different for every company. They created their own set of innovation categories, and they created this matrix where at the lower level is the incremental, like the next fire station, police station. At the top is the really revolutionary stuff. And every time a team comes up with a new toy, they have to map it on the matrix and not just say, here is the toy, but here's all the other complementary innovations that together, like the iPod, is going to make this an unstoppable force in the market. So for Mindstorms, you have to do the toy, but you also do the sensors and the programming language. You're going to make it in the same way, so similar manufacturing business model, but they also wanted to sell it into the educational market as a tool for teaching robotics. So they partnered with Carnegie Mellon University to create a whole curriculum around the toy. But the real innovation here was how you work with your user partners. And so when you start mapping it that way, when you demand that your teams not just come up with a new product, but the whole full spectrum, then you get what you ask for. But most companies, of course, don't do that. But the other thing that happens is that it affects how you staff the team. You put people where you see these challenges, and it also affects how you review it. It changes the management's approach pretty dramatically, where you invest, and of course the results that you get. If you want the full spectrum of innovation, you actually have to ask for it. And so they've got another role who's worrying about this and coordinating this across the different parts of the company, because the other thing that they've done, and I wrote a little Harvard Business Review piece on this in 2009, is they've restructured the company so it's very clear what quadrant of the matrix, what business unit is responsible for which quadrant of the matrix. It's very carefully assigned across that. So they've taken that to the next step. They've even gone further out now, to where they found an architect, a guy named Adam Reed Tucker, who was making some amazing Lego creations, and they said, why don't you just make some kits and we'll publish them. Rather than being a toy creator, developer, producer, we'll publish somebody else's. And they took it the next step further. This just rolled out in the UK and the US last week, where it's called Lego Kyuso. It started in Japan, and Kyuso is Japanese for wish. Although I've been told the way I pronounce it, it's actually Japanese for penis. But so my apologies if I offended anybody. But what it means is any of you who have a creation that you'd like Lego to make, you put it up on Lego Kyuso. Any of you can do this. And if you get 10,000 people who wish that Lego would make that kit, then they will, with some constraints, right? They don't have the license to make a Lego Bart Simpson, for example, but they will make that kit, and you will get royalties from that. So they're even taking it a step further. They've got a whole business development group who's thinking about ideas like this and managing this, so they get more and more ideas from outside the company and bring those to market. And so, again, I have a hard time talking about Lego in less than 4 hours, what I wanted to do is show you just kind of the pieces of this. That the first thing that they did is they went out and they talked to their customers. And their customers told them very clearly what the direction was. Also internally, they became very much better at tracking whether a toy was going to be profitable or not. And everybody who's developing a toy knows what their profitability has to be and will be. But then, what we saw there was with the Bionicles. They started up this licensing group, and they have a whole new process to be able to make sure that when they're opening up innovation, they're able to work well with partners. With Mindstorms, they have this community organizer and this whole multi-level hierarchy in the community and new ways of managing that. They have this matrix to make sure that they're coordinating the different types of innovations so they really get a full spectrum of innovations that complement each other and give them a sustained competitive advantage in the market. And there's lots more pieces that they do to make sure that they have a clear direction that's communicated, a very clear understanding of where all their innovations are, and some tools and roles and structural things and other mechanisms to make sure that they can adjust, do mid-course corrections to keep things on track. And so I won't go through all these, but these are all true. You do want to hire diverse and creative people, and they're doing that more than ever, but they're also hiring very disciplined managers to focus that effort and make sure that they get the best of that. You do want to think outside the box, but Lego's making a lot of money inside the box. That next police station makes a tremendous amount of money. You do want to sail for blue ocean, but if you're a shark, which Lego is, then red ocean is where you want to be. And in construction toys, Lego is the shark. And you want to open up innovation, but it is a different set of skills. You do need to learn how to manage it differently. And innovation culture is my least favorite of these because it is so fuzzy. But theirs is innovation culture, but it's not kind of a soft, fuzzy, creative culture. It's a culture with some teeth in it about innovation should be creative, yes, but profitable too. So less than 4 hours, right? So Lego was heading for disaster. They managed to turn it around, and now they're an airplane flying at 30,000 feet. The last little pitch that I'll do is that I've got a survey, which for free, if you're interested in how your company compares to Lego and other companies, just go to bit.ly/innovation guidance, take the survey, and I'll send you your results compared to other companies and to Lego. Thank you.
I'm afraid for time reasons, we're not going to be able to have questions of David. However, I have found his little business card, and I'll leave it on the chair just to remind us of that great presentation. Thank you very much.